Way. I'll start here to my left.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. My name is Representative Eddie Dave Brzezinski from Luzerne County.
I'm Representative Mike Strolla from Lancaster, and I chair the Democratic Policy Committee.
Representative Marty Flynn, the 113th District, Scranton.
Good morning, Mark Longetti. I represent the 7th District in Mercer County.
Hi, good morning. I'm Representative Chris Sinat. I represent the 9th District in Lawrence County.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, say, can you see for the wrongs early light, what so proudly prevailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the red country watch, were so gallantly streaming. And the rockets that flare, the bombs bursting in air, keep through the night, that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the
I imagine at some point in time today we'll hear about the importance of music programs in education. We're going to get started here. We had the members introduce themselves. We're here today to talk about education funding at the request of Representative Flynn, and I'm going to turn this meeting over to him and let him conduct the hearing.
First off, I'd like to thank the Scranton School District for having us and letting us use their facility. Very gracious. And first off, we're going to have opening remarks from Dr. Alexis Kurian. She's the new superintendent for the Scranton School District. We're going to have her give us opening remarks and a welcome.
Good morning. On behalf of the Scranton School District, I would like to welcome everyone. I'm Alexis Kurian, the district's incoming superintendent, accompanied by John Merritt, our acting superintendent. Like all educators and taxpayers in the state, I share a great interest in the governor's budget proposal, as the hopes, dreams, and aspirations for the future rest with our students. The governor's proposed budget is an expression of belief in putting students first and is an investment in our future. For too long, school districts subsequent years, the Scranton School District would be able to chart a course of recovery and better serve our students from pre-K through grade 12 and beyond. So today, we're looking forward to hearing more about the governor's budget proposal and the increase in early childhood education and our K-12 education funding, as our needs are great and our hopes are high. I thank you and would like to turn it back over to Representative Flynn.
Thank you, thank you.
If I could just make a comment, I know that the administration has reached out to superintendents across the state and asked them for a detailed description of what it is they would do with the additional funds that are being proposed. I also know that the leaders in both the Republican House and Republican Senate sent a letter out saying, don't bother, you don't really count on those dollars anyway. I would encourage you to not only respond to the governor and let him know what you would do with those dollars, but also to let your media markets know what it is that you would do with those dollars, because I think one of the things that is necessary is to let the public know what can be done with those dollars. I've often heard, and I hear from some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, well, that money is just going to go, all they're going to do is up teacher salaries and nothing's going to change. I would be willing to place a pretty big bet that that's not what was on your list in terms of the things that you would do in terms of restoring, either restoring teachers, reducing class size, restoring programs that had been cut, things like that. And so I think it's important that the public understand that, as well as the administration, in terms of what it is that could be done with additional dollars, and that it wouldn't just be the same thing as has been going on in the last couple of years.
Okay, next we have our panel of local school district superintendents. First, we're going to hear from Paul Brennan, superintendent at Riverside School District. Paul. Also, Dr. Michael Mahan, superintendent at Abington Heights School District, my former freshman football coach. Okay, you can start.
Okay. My name is Paul Brennan, Superintendent of the Riverside School District. I would like to take a moment to thank Pennsylvania State Representative Marty Flynn for inviting me to provide testimony on the financial status of the Riverside School District and the potential impact of Governor Wolf's proposed budget. I'd also like to thank his esteemed colleagues, because I feel this is very important of what you're doing in order to progress here in Pennsylvania. I want to start by saying it is a true privilege for me to serve as superintendent of schools for Riverside. Not a lot of superintendents can say that they have been a student in the same district that they are a superintendent, a coach, a teacher, a principal, and now fulfilling my lifelong dream of being the superintendent for Riverside. Lacing them up in the morning is the easy part for me because we do love our job. Even as Dr. Mahan could attest, obstacles come at us all the time. Quite frankly, at Riverside, the root of all obstacles since I've been here, and even before me with Superintendent Woods for probably the last 5 or 6 years, has always traced back to our financial crisis that we're in. Anytime we have a large issue, we could always trace it back. Right now, currently, we're making decisions based on survival mode rather than best practice. And to me, that's not doing justice to any of our students and our faculty. I think it's important to tell a little bit about who Riverside is. We are a small suburban school district in Lackawanna County. Obviously in Pennsylvania, our district serves the boroughs of Moosic and Taylor, which are both suburbs of Scranton. Our enrollment as of the 1st of April was 1,549 students. We are comprised of the Riverside Junior Senior High School, which houses grades 7 through 12, Riverside Elementary East in Moosic, Pennsylvania, which houses grades K through 6, and Riverside Elementary West, which houses grades K through 4. About 36% of our revenue comes from the state of Pennsylvania. I did provide you with some different tables and graphs that you can browse as I'm going. We are always hovering around a 50% free and reduced lunch percentage. However, that is a moving target because we are a very transient population for a small school district. Also, our special education percentage is a bit over 18%, and again, that number fluctuates as students rapidly move in and out of our district. I go into talking about, where the revenue comes. I mentioned 36% at the state. Currently, since I've been here, unfortunately, we've had to raise our taxes for 2 years straight since I've been the superintendent. We're at the point where how much more can the taxpayers take on? I also included in there the property tax reduction proposal from Schools That Teach and Governor Wolf's proposal. Adequacy is one of the 4 critical goals that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania must achieve in finalizing the proposed funding formula for the future. The Riverside School District in particular has seen a spike in low-income students, homeless students, and students who are English language learners. Our ESL population is growing rapidly, and we are second to the Scranton School District in about our 3 local counties. For a small school district, that's a big transition, and transitions like that take a lot of funding to make sure we do it right. If you look at the graph 1 that I provided you, our ESL costs just for next year alone are going to go up approximately $109,000. And that's a big, to us, that's a little bit over $1 million, so that's a big raise for us. Laid out by Governor Wolf, another thing that he talks about is predictability. It is also a critical goal for Pennsylvania's future success. In order to be responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars, we need to be able to predict the amount of state funding that we will receive. Last year, we had to incorporate the Ready to Learn grant funds in our budget just to balance. Unfortunately, when the budget did pass, it came back $129,000 and change short. Normally, we wouldn't put that in our budget to balance, but like I have mentioned previously, we're in survival mode. So this, I do give you some boilerplate stuff here, but really I want to come today and speak from the heart. This is real. This is very important, and that's why I commend you here today. This is important for the survival of the Riverside School District. One of the biggest breaths of fresh air that I saw in Governor Wolf's proposal was the charter school reform. For us, as you see in graph 2, the tuition expenses are increasing at an alarming rate. And again, that goes back to the predictability, which that's another number for us that is very hard to predict, varying from different places. And I don't feel that the funding, the tuition rates were very fair. I will say going forward, as we hopefully get that charter school reform, I would say make sure you pay close attention to monitoring special education within the charter schools, because I would personally predict a spike in those numbers. So I think that's important to make sure there's a piece of accountability in that. Obviously, the big elephant in the room when we sit down and do budgets are the PSERS, the pension increases, massive increases. And again, I provided graph 3 there. Not only Riverside School District, but school districts across the Commonwealth, and how the contribution rates have increased and will continue to increase. We feel, pension reform is desperately needed. Additional challenges, as a young superintendent, only in my second year. Prior to when I got here, we had the unfortunate event of being in survival mode for a number of years. Our workforce today looks very differently than it has in the past. Class sizes are a lot higher. Back in 2012, we had to furlough 8 professionals, 6 teachers and 2 counselors. We are still feeling the impacts of that, and with an unknown future, and again, to stress the importance of fighting for this, with an unknown future that can only get worse. On March 2nd, 2015, the Riverside Education Association participated in a work stoppage. This was the first strike in the Riverside School District since 1995. Again, that is another event that was driven by lack of funds or funding. The impact that the proposed schools that teach budget would have on the Riverside School District, and quickly you can see for yourself there, the 2 of the most important revenues sources, the basic education subsidy and the special education subsidy would really help Riverside to sustain mainly our full-day kindergarten program. And that's very important to give the kids that foundation, those building blocks in those early years, as you guys know. I mentioned about speaking from the heart. In closing, I want to steal the slogan that I think the Pennsylvania State Education Association has been using for the last year under Governor Corbett, and that's kids, cuts, and consequences. And my biggest worries, and I did sound the alarm to our teachers in our community. I'm worried about the kids. The kids have suffered because the quality of our educational programming keeps diminishing as we make these cuts. We've gone through many Down Valley reporters and numerous articles in the local newspapers, and the theme is always the same: cut this, trim that, and it's been ongoing for Riverside. The consequences, I've mentioned it, not to beat a dead horse, but we have been in survival mode and will continue to be in survival mode until we can get over. Governor Wolf's budget has been referred to as Jenga-like by Steve Essak from the Morning Call. He states that each piece is a key, and if pieces start to be removed, it will all come tumbling down. At Riverside, we have been removing a piece or 2 each year, and I can strongly say our Jenga tower is ready to topple. I commend Governor Wolf's proposal. I believe that his budget proposal is on the right path to reversing some of the damaging trends that our school district has faced over the last several years. It is going to take us out of survival mode? Probably not. Definitely not in this first year or so. However, it is very refreshing to know that we are heading in the right direction. It's the first time in a long time that we can say that. Let's face it, any time that you hear the phrases fully restore, largest in Pennsylvania history, historic investments in education, it has to be a budget worth fighting for. Again, I want to thank you for allowing me, Representative Flynn, for testifying today. I urge that all of you are strong advocates and keep not only a piece or 2, but all the proposed pieces intact of the schools that teach proposal. I agree with Governor Wolf by saying that a high-quality education is the birthright of every Pennsylvanian. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Paul. Next up, we'll have Dr. Michael Mann, and we'll wait for questions till after his testimony.
Thank you. My name is Michael Mahan. I'm superintendent of the Abington Heights School District, and it's a great privilege to participate in today's hearing regarding Governor Wolf's proposed budget and its impact on public schools. This is an issue of great importance to the Abington Heights School District and its community. The Democratic Policy Committee deserves tremendous credit for joining us here in Lackawanna County. Your presence requires both time away from your offices and time away from your homes and your families. your efforts not only to address an important public policy issue, but to include us in the discussion are great. They're a great testament to your commitment to the people of Pennsylvania and to our region. I would also like to especially thank Representative Flynn for hosting this meeting today, along with Representative Krvulich. Representative Flynn is our representative of the Abington Heights School District in Harrisburg. I also, as was noted a little earlier, had the privilege of being his former teacher and coach. He has always been a hardworking and dedicated individual. He is extremely loyal and one of the few people I have ever known to have never missed a single day of high school for the 4 years he attended. Perfect attendance for 4 years. Very true. So congratulations for that. Little known, but very true. And I also want Representative to know that I'm very sorry if I ever tried to stump you with a question, given where I'm sitting here today. This is my 15th year as a school district superintendent, and I've never been more encouraged about a state budget than I have been this year. More than ever before, individuals from across the political spectrum in the governor's cabinet and legislative leadership have been sending me encouraging letters with all kinds of helpful advice on how to put together a budget. With all of this encouragement, surely good news must be on the way. Governor Wolf has proposed a courageous budget that recognizes the dire need that exists in Pennsylvania's public schools. As I understand it, $1 billion have been set aside to assist public schools in their mission to educate the Commonwealth's children. These resources are desperately needed, with so many districts either at or racing toward insolvency's door. Pennsylvania is flat broke by almost any measure and getting more broke by the minute. Our short-term 2014-2015 budget is structurally imbalanced. Our medium and long-term liabilities are immense and growing. Perhaps worst of all, our demographics are shifting at a rapid rate with an increase in elderly Pennsylvanians in need of services and an alarming drop in younger citizens who generate growth and revenue to support these services. If Pennsylvania were a public company, make no mistake, its board would be looking for a buyer. It is encouraging that members of this committee are here today because you know that Pennsylvania is not a company. Its leaders cannot simply walk away blaming prior generations for their poor decisions. Together, we must work to rebuild Pennsylvania's ability to serve the needs of its citizens by delivering on its constitutional, statutory, and aspirational obligations. Central to that mission is Pennsylvania's public schools. It is well known that our public schools are struggling. Tens of thousands of educators are out of work. A generation of teachers is being lost. Talented young people are not entering the field, as evidenced by the cratering of enrollment in Pennsylvania's teacher preparation programs. Taxpayers are being squeezed through their property tax assessments, many of which have not been updated for decades. A great public education is a precious gift bestowed by a community on its children. Our districts are either on the brink or heading toward it. Drastic and immediate action is now necessary. It is my hope that this committee will use both its authority and its standing to inspire the difficult decisions necessary to sustain our public schools mission. Governor Wolf has begun this hard process by offering, according to all accounts, a structurally balanced budget. He and his supporters are to be congratulated for planning to fund the Commonwealth's institution beyond a single budget or election cycle. Setting public education as a top priority in a manner that is fiscally sustainable is a great gift to the Commonwealth's public schools. Not all schools, however, benefit equally. Abington Heights is a district of 3,300 students located just north of Scranton. The district has over the years prepared for hard fiscal times. Fiscal year 14-15 is the first year we will enter into a structural deficit, with subsequent years promising larger deficits, deeper cuts, and property tax increases in a county that has not had reassessment in over 40 years. The district's free and reduced lunch rates, while still low for the region, have spiked from 6% to 18% over the past 4 years. According to widely available information, subsidy under the governor's budget will increase for Abington Heights by approximately $300,000 on a budget of $43 million, well less than 1%. In contrast to the $300,000 increase in revenue, the district's pension obligation will go up by over $900,000 next year. And of course, half of that is picked up by the state, $450,000 to the school district. If estimates on tax revenues are to be believed, when additional subsidy and property tax reductions are netted out, residents of the Abington Heights School District will pay over $10 million in new taxes under the governor's proposed budget. This represents well over $350 for every single resident of the district. It equates to nearly 25% of the district's total budget and almost all of the subsidy we receive from the Commonwealth. Now, I clearly believe that our community recognizes that good public policy is much more than calculating the winners and the losers in any particular proposal. If, however, the numbers are correct, it is crystal clear that too much is being asked of the Abington Heights School District community. It is my hope that members of the committee will examine this important issue in their upcoming budget deliberations. In addition to developing a transformational budget, there are other challenges that must be met in Harrisburg. Our pensions are an obvious starting point. Our massive liabilities must be refinanced to lower interest rates. To avoid the mistakes of the past, this refinancing must be funded through some form of a dedicated and perhaps sunsetting revenue stream. The governor's budget recognized that refinancing debt at lower rates with dedicated and reliable revenue streams is simply a responsible thing to do. As we sit yet again near all-time highs in the stock market, but with 10-year Treasury notes yielding less than 2%, it might well be necessary to shift more investment risk from the districts and Commonwealth to public employees in order to achieve the type of pension reform necessary to avoid an educational calamity. Collective bargaining law must also be reformed. At a time when many districts are struggling to keep their doors open, status quo can no longer be the default way we run our schools. Our current collective bargaining law rewards the party most skilled at and most willing to engage in attritional warfare. Pennsylvania needs a collective bargaining scheme that is fair to its employees but allows school districts the flexibility to adapt rapidly to changing economic environments. School districts must be empowered and encouraged to reinvent themselves. They must find new ways to leverage technology and partnerships. They must have the courage to be ruthlessly efficient in delivering high-quality instructional opportunities to our students. In order to build those efficiencies, there must be a shift in focus at the state and federal level from regulation to innovation. I believe there's emerging evidence that this shift is already underway in Harrisburg. Our conversations and resources in recent years have been far more centered on data collection, accountability models, and compliance than on building the foundation for excellence in a challenging fiscal environment. Our board in Abington Heights, for example, would much rather devote their attention to a statewide initiative to bring computer coding to classrooms at all levels than a statewide conversation on how to comply with the PIMS manual. I am grateful for this opportunity to present my thoughts to the Democratic Policy Committee at a time when even incremental change is hard. Ground-shifting changes, such as the few issues I tried to describe, may seem unrealistic. While unrealistic it may be, a failed public school system will be realized absent this type of change. So on behalf of the Abington Heights Board and the school district, thank you for your devotion to public education.
Thank you, Superintendent Mahan. Any of the members have any questions? Mark Longetti?
Thank you both for your testimony and your time today. I want to focus on a couple of points made in Mr. Brennan's comments. You mentioned that you have a very transient population for a small school district. We were up in Erie recently and held testimony from some superintendents there that talked about transient rate. I know Dr. Mahone talked about the PIMS system. I know that's not a favorite of many school districts. How do you measure transiency, and are you already reporting that data on PIMS? Is that available to us?
Yeah, the hard thing is, they move so fast. I think October is the date that the state goes by. So, yes, we are reporting that. Our demographics are also changing. I mentioned in particular, we have students that come, and some of it I know Scranton deals with the same issues, but on a bigger level. Students will come in and come out. We're trying to prepare them for state mandated testing. They're here one day, they're out the next. The easiest route nowadays is to go to the cyber charter. Some students, our ESL population I mentioned. In terms of PIMS, we are recording it. I think Dr. Mann hit the nail on the head though. With that, I'm going to say our reporting is not, we try to make it as flawless, but we're as lean as possible, I think, from a staffing standpoint. And then sometimes when the state rolls out certain initiatives, it affects the smaller school districts a little bit more than it may a bigger school district. So we do struggle with PIMS, although we do make and report effectively, just because we don't have the staff. In terms of, we just have, it's not the same. Riverside isn't used to that transient population, and then recently in the last, let's say 4 or 5 years, students are in and out at a rapid pace. So
The reason I asked the question is both myself and Chairman Sterla serve on the Basic Education Funding Commission, where we're trying to develop the new funding for. And we've talked about transients as something that is an added cost to school districts. If I'm a school district that has a significant transient rate, people are moving in and out, my belief is, I've been an advocate, that adds cost to that school district to educate. But we have to be able to measure that. We have to be able to say, well, this school district has a certain transient rate. Now, we heard from the superintendent up in Iroquois, he told us that that's reported through PIMS. He had an actual number and said, well, we started out with these kids, and at the end of the year, we had these kids, and our transient rate was thus and such.
yeah, and I think that was Representative Bizzaro.
Right.
Yeah, I followed it. I don't have the actual number, so I don't want to misspeak here today, but a lot of the things that I mentioned play into that as well. It's not just students transferring in under the McKinley-Vento Act. We have homeless students that take on. We've seen a tremendous increase in homeless students that, you're transporting, there's a lot of cost they.
And the commission has talked about measuring homelessness too. Any information that you can get to us on what is a good way to measure transients, whether you're already reporting that, and what you think that added cost factor is. I'd be interested in hearing that from your perspective.
Okay, I try. I'll take a hard look at that and I'll get you my information.
The other, you mentioned, you've had a spike in English language learners, and we had a little conversation about that. Scranton School District has the same issue, right? They have 38 languages, I was told. Some of those folks, from what I understand, are being relocated to the United States, countries like Nepal, through a refugee relocation plan. And it just occurred to me as I'm sitting here, has anybody ever had a discussion with your congressman, your senator, that, okay, we understand this relocation plan, but that's a cost to all of us. And I'm just wondering if the federal government has ever been broached with, we need some help with that cost. You want us to take the refugees. Now we have English language learners in our school district.
Yeah, we definitely do have an increased cost with that, and I would like to talk to you about that as well. I said we're second to Scranton to the point where we're in a consortium up at the local intermediate unit, and we're going to get kicked out because our numbers have increased so much. So just this year alone, and it has increased 109,000. I don't know where that would factor. I don't think there's a measurement in the proposal that would factor that in.
It just seems like there ought to be some contract, some understanding between the federal government and the local partner to say, we'll take the refugees, but how about some dollars here to help us with English language learners? Last question I wanted to ask you is, when you went over your numbers, your money from the state level is 36%. think you said that you have 50% free and reduced lunch. We're talking at the Funding Commission about whether or not aid ratio accurately reflects the school district's poverty level. And I don't know if you have a sense from your community. It seems like you would be getting a higher percentage from the state than you're getting. Do you believe, part of what we're talking about is, in some cases, the market value of homes is not a good measure of the poverty of the school district. Do you believe your market value is higher, is perhaps it's out of whack with your personal income level? Do you have any sense of that?
Yeah, I think the Scranton Times, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, I think the Scranton Times just ran an article where the median wage level, I want to say 47,000 in Moosic, and then, it's a tale sometimes of two towns. So in Taylor, it's a lot less.
So even with music, it's below I think the state
Yeah,
average is
we're
52,000.
definitely below. So I don't think it is a fair representation. Again, I would like to explore that even further. Because I don't think it factors that in appropriately.
All right, thank you.
Representative Pashensky.
Thank you, Representative Flynn, and my congratulations to Representative Flynn for taking the initiative and bringing this hearing here. He's a strong advocate for our public school system, and it's a pleasure to work alongside him. We sit together on the floor, as a matter of fact, and we converse on a lot of different subjects. Thank you very much for your testimonies here. It's very important. And, we have an opportunity here relative to this budget. And both of you have brought forth a lot of great information. And I think it's remarkable to see that a school district like Abington Heights is now concerned financially. Abington Heights was one of those school districts that I think most people felt was more affluent and was able to manage their budgets appropriately to provide their kids with a great education. I come from Wilkes-Barre area, that's what I represent right now, and I see that the Riverside area has 50% free and reduced, and yours went from 6 to 8% of kids that are 18, I'm sorry, 6 to 18%. In Wilkes-Barre, we've got over 70 to 80%. I would suggest probably Scranton would be something very similar to that. So you're highlighting that as a concern of your cost increase. Superintendent Brennan, your cost for ESL increased 200%. Your charter cost over 100%. And that's the same thing that's happening pretty much throughout the state. Now, we just had 4 years of austerity. And there's nobody in the room, or certainly none of us, that can accept any kind of fat. The fat has to be cut out of the budget. But after 4 years, you think it's a fair assumption to say the fat's been cut out?
I hope so. I hope so.
Well, I'm talking about your particular situation.
Oh, absolutely. I'm very happy to respond to that. Over the past, I've been privileged to be superintendent at Abington Heights for 10 years. In recent years, we've cut 10% of our staff. Fortunately, through attrition, we have really tried to avoid furloughs. We've done that across the board. We have taken the very unwanted, but we believe necessary step to start to subcontract work out in some of our custodian positions as work becomes available. We have spent 4 years without a contract negotiating with our union, because while our teachers deserve every dime we give them and more, there's just not enough money available to give them that money. And we have been dealing with the pension increases, and what we've seen is that as we cut staff by 10%, our cost of employee benefits went up 1%. And that is simply because those fewer that are remaining are escalating at a rate beyond our control. And that was during status quo. So we have increased class size. We've had rooms full of elementary people saying 26 kids in the class is too high. We have entered into...
26?
Yeah, 26, too high, and there may be more.
That's a pretty good number compared to some of the class sizes I've heard. 30, 35.
And 30 and 35 are absolutely unacceptable, and that's where we're heading. And I would tell you, I firmly believe that yes, Abington Heights has worked very hard and is in a better position, but the only thing that is different between Abington Heights and Wilkes-Barre and Scranton is time. Because over time, we again are entering into a structural deficit. Other districts are ahead of ours, but the system is in such a position that we are all cascading toward insolvency.
Thank you very much. That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
And it's true.
So 4 years of austerity, 4 years of these huge cuts, has now jeopardized a school district like Abington Heights, which for all intents and purposes was a very solid, well-run, well-funded school system.
Well, I would suggest that more so than the cuts, all right, was the escalating liabilities that we face. So we have had, again, not a lot of our money comes from the state, only about 25%. So a lot of our funding comes from our local taxpayers. And so when we look at the cuts per se, we are scheduled for next year to have a $300,000, $345,000 increase. It's the $919,000 increase in our pension liability that's crushing us. So if we receive no subsidy increases whatsoever, we would be fine were it not for the ever-mounting liabilities for pension and the ever-mounting liabilities for medical benefits, which have been really hurting us. So it's the system. We could work to cut, but we're fighting on a treadmill because as we cut and as we roll back, it is the escalating bills that keep coming in beyond our control and really beyond your control, all right, that put us on our road to the fiscal crisis.
But the point is, the austerity plan has not worked. You've done everything you possibly can to stay afloat.
Right.
You've had 4 years of reductions of state support, even though your community supports at 75 to 25. The healthcare is another issue. That issue is another monster that we have to deal with. And the pension, we've already known about that since 2001. So we knew we were preparing for that, and I think most school districts were preparing for the, quote, pension spike. And we know why that was caused as well, I believe. We can make it part of record here if we want to spend a little time on that. But the point that I'm making with you is that all school districts, you're in better shape than many. You have 16 school districts right now that are on the verge of bankruptcy. Within the next year or two, you're going to have another 20, 30 or more. That tells you what? The system's not working. That tells you the system, you've done all the cuts that you can. Superintendent Brennan, I believe you've done everything you possibly can to survive.
Everything they've asked, shared service agreements, when you look, we're in that 20 to 30 that you're just talking about. I think we ranked 483rd out of 500. We're the school right above those that were in a negative fund balance. So the fat has been trimmed.
So the point that I'm coming back to is, we can't continue on this austerity program. This does not work. 4 years of this does not work. You've done all the cuts that you're able to make. Now the jeopardy is, the students are in jeopardy. There's no doubt about it. We just heard a magnificent chorus perform. That was an outstanding performance. Terrific harmony. Yet another school district that testified yesterday had to cut their music and art, certain athletics from 7th and 8th grade. That's not right. So whoever's in this room, and I'm not sure who is, the fact of the matter is we have a problem. This group right here, we want to fix it. Governor Wolf has put together a very comprehensive package that demonstrates his concern for business, for the property tax owner, and certainly for the students. He's indicated time and time again that education is the key to our economic growth here. We have quality schools, we have a chance for economic growth. What I'm leading up to is that There's been a lot of talk relative to House Bill 76, Senate Bill 76, eliminating your property taxes. We have studied this issue, and we have found out through authoritative sources, Department of Revenue, and also the Independent Fiscal Office. House Bill 76, Senate Bill 76 does not work. It cannot work. And there's a multitude of reasons why it doesn't. Yet there's still this bantering out there that they're going to be able to eliminate your property taxes by passing 76. What Governor Wolf did was he heard the outcries of people that are involved in property taxes. A lot of people are also strapped. This plan gives every property tax owner some relief. Now, if we look at Abington Heights,
22%.
it is the proposed tax reduction for every one of the folks in Abington Heights would be $666. And in Riverside, it would be $692. In this district, Scranton, it would be $1,015. Those are substantial reductions to help those property tax owners. He is also proposing 50% funding for all school districts, or bringing you up according to the 50% funding formula that we have right now. That hasn't been done in 40 years. If he does that, if we can pass this, it stabilizes your property tax structure so that your school districts would not have to increase their taxes. So in addition to that, in stabilizing your property taxes, it now gives you enough dollars to begin to operate your school district more effectively for the purpose, which is to educate our kids as effectively as we possibly can. So regarding your property taxes and the governor's proposal, it is a very comprehensive proposal that is going to benefit, as we look at it, just about every school district in the 500 districts that we have. And if you were to receive this, Superintendent Brennan, I think you would just indicated that you could begin to stabilize your finances and you would be able to provide some of those necessary resources for your students. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I think just in the accountability block grant alone, that would bring it back to 2010, 2011 levels, which to us would be great for our full-day kindergarten program. to help
Your
sustain
full-day
that.
kindergarten, maybe your dual enrollment, your tutoring programs to help some of these transients. Wilkes-Barre has a transient population of almost 30%. And there's no way those kids are going to do well on those tests, which then, you know what happens there. So, I didn't have any questions for you. I just wanted some clarification as we went through some of these issues. But I appreciate your efforts here today, and you know, we're certainly willing to work hard with you and for you, you know, for the betterment of the kids here in Pennsylvania. I thank you very much. Thank you, Representative Flynn.
Sid, you had a question?
Gentlemen, thank you for being here today. I appreciate it. We have had on-time budgets the past 4 years. We haven't seen a protracted budget dispute drawn out since Governor Rendell was in office. But there's speculation, depending on who you talk to. Governor Wolf said yesterday he thought it was going to be an extended budget period before it settled. Others say they don't think it will be. But what does an extended budget, time period without a budget, do to you as a school district? As it gets closer and closer to the new school year, and it's a different story from the last time we had the budget impasse of over 100 days. We didn't have the cuts in education funding that we have today that have occurred over the past 4 years. But what happens in the event of an extended budget holdout?
Well, I could speak only because with Governor Corbin, we mentioned that we know it's not a best practice, but just to survive, we factored the Ready to Learn grant into our thing, and it came back short. That's basically where we would be at. We would have to factor in this number just to balance and hoping, and that's why I urge to keep all pieces intact and to fight for that, because really for us it's just a waiting game. And then, we've been honestly surviving on things you wouldn't even think of, transfer taxes that are very risky, luck of the draw. So that's what I mean by survival mode. So for us, we'd be factoring that in, and it'd be a waiting game with hope in our eyes that, we can put all of the pieces together, because we need every dollar.
I think generally speaking, under normal times, with tax bills going out in early July or August, a lot of districts' cash comes in during that time frame. So, again, generally speaking, it's not as much a cash flow issue as if it occurred later in the year. However, we hear of many districts that are doing their best just to get along. They're postponing last year's bills and, just doing that type of thing. So for those districts that are close to the brink, anything that a little nudge is what puts them over. And, we talk about sometimes your tax anticipation notes and going out to banks and paying more interest and all that kind of thing. So, a small delay I don't think is catastrophic, but I was the superintendent when we had that big long issue. I think they said the frost around the pumpkins was a term that was used. And that type of thing, given the precarious position districts are in, could push many of them over the edge, I think.
When you talk over the edge, what happens? I mean, do you think about that? It would almost be that you have to start thinking about that already, but, and we've heard cut band, cut sports, cut this, cut that, but realistically, when you look ahead, if it comes to that point, there has to be a contingency plan, isn't there? Or doesn't there?
I think the contingency plan is not meeting payroll. That I think is where we're heading. And we've seen, as was referenced before, there's a small number of districts that are heading in that direction, and they have recovery officers and plans coming in, and you have unthinkable like receiver issues where they come in and they do almost a structured bankruptcy where you're out and you're out. That is where many districts are heading as pension continues to decline. And I think, unfortunately, until we see in our region, on all of our regions, districts that are landing in that level of crisis, it will be hard to really push toward the type of very painful reform that's necessary to keep our districts moving, to keep our system in place. We are in danger of a systemic failure in public schools in Pennsylvania.
And he brought up a great point, and I brought my business manager with me here today, Mr. Joseph Surgeon. I know just last year alone, we were thinking about going with a TAN, because if you think about it, down in the business office, in terms of a crisis, the building's on fire, that's probably your most crisis. Second is payroll. We were sitting there thinking, how are we going to make payroll 2 different time periods? So I think the program cuts would come the following year, but right there, like Dr. Mahan said, we're just trying to make payroll a lot of times, and Joe could attest to that. We sat there long and hard many times and thought, okay, let's go with our contingency plan, and we were that close.
Well, if you could get the business manager to hold off on his salary, that would keep the school district going for about 4 or 5 more years.
We're chipping away at that. We're chipping away at that.
I could say that because your business manager and I have been friends since we're about this tall, so.
And I appreciate you being active. You're always there for us. Thank you. In our district. I think tomorrow you have a hearing yourself.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Sterlo?
Thanks. A couple of questions related to comments related to your testimony. Mr. Brennan, you talked about that this won't get you out of survival mode, but it'll at least give you a hope that you'll someday be able to get there. And the 2014-15 budget that the state put together and sent dollars out to school districts, in spite of some people's claims, it was record high numbers of dollars. The total dollars that the state sent to school districts was less than the 2008-2009 budget year. they were coming from different sources, but the reality was you don't really care whether stuff's coming through the feds and we're passing it on to you, or whether it's coming in the form of one block grant or another. It's, what did you get from us? And the reality was, this year, you got less from us than you did in 2008, 2009. With the proposals that Governor Wolf has put out, when he talks about restoring funds, he talks about restoring them to 2010, 2011 levels. You talked about the accountability block grant levels. Even with that, and as historic as this is, I mean, putting like $1 billion more back into education, I think people need to realize that we're restoring them to 2010 levels in the 2015, 2016 year. We still have, I mean, and I know I've talked to Governor Wolf, he said, and then there's more to do after that, because you can't operate in 2016 at a 2010 level either. But we got to start that track back, or else you're going to be in 2016 operating at 2008 levels, and that's just, impossible. I appreciated your comment to say, look, are we out of the woods yet? No, but this at least gets us to the point where we can see we're not going to drown.
Well, I think you need that breath of fresh air. That's really important in the everyday grind of a financial crisis. So, it gives you that light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully, it is that's why I brought that up with 2010, 2011 levels. The theme, Representative Sterla, as you're in Allentown, Philadelphia, Erie, I think the theme is all the same. But that's why I think all those pieces need to stay intact, because for us, that is big. With the hope that it will continue to progress for Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Both of you mentioned the pension system, and I hate to get into that can of worms, but in 2010 when we did Act 120, it's my understanding that portion of the pension system for all employees moving forward since 2010 is 100% funded and is actually costing you 2.9% of payroll. Correct me if I'm wrong, that part seems to be working in terms of the level of benefits, the additional contributions employees make, and what you need to contribute, if it's only 2.9%. Is that correct?
First, I will say that was very much a step in the right direction. And our concern, at least in Abington Heights, speaking for myself, is not the level of benefit, all right, but rather the risk that's involved going forward. So when we get our pension bill, I don't know that it's broken out between pre and post Act 120. I was under the impression, and perhaps incorrectly so, that the savings associated with Act 120 were amortized into the current level of payment. So those savings, which will surely occur 30 years from now when the individuals retire, have been pushed back into the system. So the 30% that we're approaching, that we're now paying, that all of us are paying together, really includes the component of savings that was factored into 120. So in the end, just as you mentioned, whether the dollar comes from the federal government or the state, the bill still comes from what I sometimes call the black hole pension system in Pennsylvania. And so the issue of whether, I think if everyone was in that position and there was no long-term liability, that would be fine. But going back to the level of risk, I checked on the 10-year Treasury bill this morning. They're about 1.8%. Our system is tuned to have to make over 7%, and they've been doing fine. But when you look at the risk premium between what we can make on a safe investment and what we expect from the market, there is the potential for a problem. And no one knows what the stock market's going to do. But if we see a crisis in equities, as we saw in several occasions leading into this problem, then it may just set us back even further. So my concern is not really over the level of benefit being received. Every teacher deserves more than they're getting. But when you look at the level of risk, while some risk shifting did occur under Act 120, there might be occasion to shift a little more given the precarious position that we find ourselves in.
Well, it's my understanding, and I think you're correct in what you said, I think there's two factors that go into that. One is, part of the reason that we can't invest in riskier things right now is because the fact that we have the $50 billion unfunded liability means that people won't allow us to go do riskier investments because they say you're already on the brink of, going there. So part of what Governor Wolf has proposed is with the $3 billion pension obligation bond is to say, we're at least going to get it to the point where every dollar that goes in from your pension payments goes to reducing that $50 billion as opposed to just paying interest on it.
Yes.
The part that I think has been misunderstood, I think, by the public mostly because they go, why don't you just cut benefits further? Even if matter of fact, if you actually said every teacher from this point forward gets no benefits whatsoever, it would actually increase our unfunded liability because those teachers that we're currently hiring under Act 120 of 2010 are actually paying into that system to help fund it. And so if you eliminate it or if you say we're going to a 401k system, you have to fund 100% of this system that you already have going here. And if these people that are moving forward aren't putting money back into that system, the problem gets worse, not better. And so part of what we need to do is figure out how to pay that unfunded liability that we ignored for 17 years when we'll just rack up another bill again tomorrow. We'll put it on the credit card. And now it's at a point where, we're just about paying the minimum payment every year, in spite of how high it is. So I commend Governor Wolf for at least starting to say, let's at least get a handle on this and start down the path of getting over that arc where we're actually paying down that unfunded liability as opposed to continuing to build it up.
I agree, and if I may just build on your point, we've heard some people resist the idea of a pension bond or a payment into the system with the logic that, well, we're just putting more money in, which to me does not make a lot of sense because it's money that we owe and it's the liability is being paid at a 7.5% interest rate. It's costing us money. So if we have an obligation and a loan and we could refinance it down from 7.5% to 4% and use that money to invest to generate returns, and I think many states have made the mistake of just stopping there and not having some recurring revenue stream to pay the bills that Wall Street will demand, which are less than what our own internal system pension is demanding. So I think that the governor and those who support this plan of a pension bond with a recurring source of revenue are making a very wise decision, and those who may not be fully immersed in this issue will look at it, well, we're borrowing money to pay money, but that really is not, we've already borrowed the money. And now our thought is that we refinance it at a lower rate and do positive things to manage our debt rather than to, as some would say, incur more debt. So I think that is precisely on point, and I agree with your assessment.
And then finally, you mentioned that not all schools benefit equally as a result of this, and I understand that. The only sort of ray of hope, and you said, look, we understand that as a community we need to, do our fair share and things like that. While you may not get back to where you want to be in this year's budget, I think we can get you there in future years' budgets. But I will also say that when those cuts occurred back in 2010, my guess is, and I don't have the figures in front of me, but because you were one of the wealthier districts at the time, you got 10% of your basic education funding cut, and you get 25% of your money from the state. The school district that got 80% from the state got 10% of theirs, so they got an 8% cut, you got a 2.5% cut in your budget. And then you probably also didn't qualify for the accountability block grant money and some of the other things that were specifically going to poor districts. And so that didn't get cut from you, but it did get cut from those other school districts. And so when we're restoring money back to all those people that got cut, and you didn't get cut as much as somebody else. So in the short term, it looks like you're getting the short end of the stick here. In the overall long haul, I think we'll get you back to where you should be in the next year or two. So hopefully, I'm just trying to,
I should be polite. But let me just offer this thought, right? Abington Heights is perceived to be an affluent school district, and in many senses we are, compared to many of the districts that Representative Brzezinski mentioned. guilty as charged. But we are not mainline Philadelphia people, where we may look from our A ratio like we're down there. We're in the bottom fifth as far as per pupil expenditures. All right, we really do hold the line in spite of our circumstances. And yes, our community pays 75% of the bill, so when 25% we get from the state goes down, it's less than someone who gets, but there are many districts in our region who have a much, much lower aid ratio and get a much greater, who spend more than we do when it comes to that particular issue. And while I agree with the overall premise, in looking specifically at the governor's proposal, it really does hit us hard. And when we look at the wage increases, tax increases and sales tax increases, it nets out to an increase of $10 million for our community. That's how much we get from the state anyway. So this is a net loss, and again, I want to emphasize, we're not here saying, well, we want ours. But we're saying that the proposal as it currently sits, just in light of your correct assessment, even with that, very much disproportionately hits our taxpayers.
Well, and hopefully, as Representative Lonchetti pointed out, with the new funding formula, we can hopefully rebalance some of that also.
Yes, I agree. I do agree. And we have two representatives, not one. For Abington Heights School District, we're so important that we could certainly work with them as we move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions?
Oh,
Okay, Eddie, one more. You're on the clock, bud.
he warned you yesterday.
I know he did. By the way, after that comment that Representative Michaels mentioned about the business manager, I don't know if they are friends anymore. Only kidding. We use the word reform, and many people have used the word reform relative to pensions. I want to make it clear today that so far, every proposal that is brought forth under the term of reform does nothing for the unfunded balance, does nothing for the debt, and even if you would create the other system, as Representative Stone was talking about, it would be a total calamity. So we just finished a hearing 2 weeks ago relative to pensions, 401ks as opposed to defined benefit, and every single individual that testified admitted that regardless of what kind of pension system you end up going to, you must pay your debt. It's the credit card thing, and that's where we are. And keep in mind that, again, the people that participate in that, they did not cause it. You did not cause it. It was the legislature that caused it in 2001 when they changed that formula. So now we're living with that. The state didn't pay anything for 2 years, then underfunded it for all those years. That's why we're in the situation we're in. So the governor is suggesting that if we modernize the liquor stores, the extra money that we get for that modernization will help pay that $3 billion bond. So it's a good way. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Representative Flynn.
Thank you for your testimony, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Rosemary Boland, the president of the Scranton Federation of Teachers and the executive vice president of the AFT Pennsylvania. Welcome, Rosemary.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Rosemary Boland. I am, as my representative, Mr. Flynn, just said, the president of the Scranton Federation of Teachers, Local 1147, and I am also the executive vice president of our state organization, the American Federation of Teachers, Pennsylvania, and I also am a vice president of the state AFL-CIO. I want to thank Chairman Sterla and my friend Marty Flynn, and I shouldn't say it that way because I view all of you as our friends here because you're here, and you're here taking time out of your lives to listen to our concerns in this room, and want to express our sincere appreciation for the fact that you are here in Scranton, Pennsylvania. I'm going to go off script a little bit. That's something I do, and I guess Eddie, you're allowed to do that too, right? Okay. I just listened to the two superintendents testify, and I just want to do some bragging here in the Scranton School District. We are a school district of over 10,000 students. We have approximately 38 languages represented in our student population. We have a huge ESL population in Scranton. And it does have a financial impact on my district because we have to teach those children. We are a welcoming school district. Our doors are open to any child who comes into this district. And we're thrilled to have these kids here. We have a population of students who just arrived from Nepal. And I hope you can take into consideration the fact that some of those children who came here last year lived in a hut. They're identified as living in, for example, Hut 38 or Hut 36. So now they come to America to fulfill their dreams for a better future, and their parents want them to be well educated. And that's what we're about in the Scranton School District. I'm so proud that you got to experience our course here at Scranton High School this morning. And I take pride in the fact that we have a wonderful music program in our district. We have a wonderful art program in our district, as well as all of our programs in our district. And yet we continue to suffer at the hands of the budget crisis as well. We've suffered far greater than our neighbors to the north and our neighbors to the near south. Why? Because we are, for all intents and purposes, a large urban school district. I also take great pride in sitting here with you this morning to say to you that in the Scranton School District, we currently do not have labor unrest. We have no strike with our plan going forward. We have tried and tried and tried to collaborate with our district to make our district the success that it is. Do we get along all the time? No. Do we disagree? Yes, we do. But for our children in the Scranton School District, we have all had to make changes to what we think we have to do every day of the week. And I need you to know that. It is most important. Regarding the pensions, I would be remiss if I didn't say to you today that while the two gentlemen just spoke with you and talked about teachers' pensions, might I suggest to everyone in this room that all of us are in the pension plan, not just teachers. And I'm thrilled that Chairman Sterla brought up Act 120. I hope everybody doesn't look it up and find out it has something to do with police, because that's not the Act 120 he's referring to. And I too have confidence in that act going forward that it will restore the pension. You suggested here this morning that testimony happened within the last few weeks about paying down that debt, and I can't argue with that because it's a reality of life. And Eddie brought up the credit card. Well, that's true. That's true. And it is not my responsibility that some law got changed in 2001 that said, foolishly, people who have a debt don't have to pay. Dare I say that if I didn't pay my Visa bill every month, the premium, the interest would just continue to compound, and I would probably never get out of debt. And I think, thank heaven, that in 2010, common sense took hold a little bit to try and take that out of our lives every day. It is a debt, but the state and school districts didn't pay their responsibility into that program. The people who worked did. They continue to pay their portion into the pension system, and that has to be on record, because it's far more important that the people in the cities and boroughs throughout this Commonwealth know that the workers do pay into their pension system. We don't have a free ride here. And let it be known also that we had this, if we did not have a defined pension system, if we went to a 401k or some other system, like the state of Alaska did, or West Virginia did, or Michigan did, they found out they practically went into bankruptcy to try and fund those programs because they were far worse. It caused them more difficulty than they had prior. And as it's been pointed out here this morning, you still have to pay the other debt. And what else I was thrilled to hear from Representative Sterler this morning is the fact that, and I would think this would be economics grade 1. If people are working with family-sustaining jobs in the state of Pennsylvania, those people are going to live in the state of Pennsylvania, they're going to support their communities and the businesses within their communities, and that helps enrich our state economically. To think that we would not have a plan for family-sustaining jobs is ridiculous in our state, or that we would even have to keep referring to that. So I, for one, am very proud that I live in Pennsylvania, that I work in Pennsylvania, and that I'm a teacher in the state of Pennsylvania. I'm proud of it. I pay property taxes to the city of Scranton. My taxes, like everybody else's in Scranton, went up. You know why it went up? In part, to fund public schools in the city, to fund our libraries in the city of Scranton. Is there something more important in the state of Pennsylvania than the children of the state of Pennsylvania? They are my future. They are your future. They're everybody's future. And might I add that because of these terrible, terrible cuts that took place over the last 4 years, which started with $1 billion, they have hurt the children of this state in a way that we can never, ever fix. We can fix budgets going forward, but what happened to those children in our state as a result of these terrible, terrible cuts, we can't make it up. In the Scranton School District, we have a pre-K program, we have a 3-4-year-old program, we have a full-day kindergarten program. Every study that you could look up, whether it's somebody who's pro-public schools or not, everybody knows that we must have a strong pre-K program. We've got to get these children into school so that we can get them ready for reading and ready for mathematics. Some of our students come into our schools, they have not one book in their homes, not one. And yet, during World War II, when the German scientists came to the United States of America, the first thing they did was get library cards and get to the nearest public library. And we cut funding to our public library system. Are we really about trying to dumb down our country to make us a nation of illiterates so that 5 people can create a system called ALEC and ruin all of us and everything our children need and want? Because if that's what's coming, I, for one, intend to stand in the front line to stop it. And this is a terrible, terrible thing that's going on in our country. I'm not telling you something you don't know. I know you do know it. But for somebody like me, who has worked forever in the public school system, to find out that somebody can be bought for $5 million, or a president can be bought for X number of millions and millions of dollars, it's a sad day in American history when this is what is going on in our country. And so we have to be cognizant of all of these issues going forward. I don't see a dire calamity happening here. I see a bright future for our state. Why? Because we just elected a governor who seems to be able to tackle the pressing problems that are staring us in the face. And I'm going to go back into this a little bit, but I had to go off script just a tad because I thought it was vitally important after what I was listening to this morning and your serious questions that you asked, and I just could not leave this room without saying that. I would be really in big trouble. So first, I would like to thank the governor, Governor Wolf, and his administration for preparing this budget. For the first time in 4 years, public school districts across the Commonwealth can finally breathe a sigh of relief. in our state, we have had our budget so strained in public schools that, as I just said, I just don't know how we would ever have made it up. You're correct. He has this $1 billion system of revenue coming forward. But we've already lost $1 billion in public education. It's gone, so we can't restore that. It's gone. And that would be compounded daily if we were talking about a credit card. How the heck are we going to make that up? We can't. So going forward, you could restore some of the funding, but you're never going to make up all that we've lost. It's a sad day in Pennsylvania history. Today, I would like to comment on 3 particular areas. Obviously, the first area I'd like to comment on is a fair funding formula for basic education. I would like to comment on a plan with a real solution in the underfunding of public employee pensions. And I would like to talk about a common sense plan for charter school funding reform. While my testimony today will focus on these 3 points, please know that at any point in time, feel free to stop me and feel free to question me at any time. I am a teacher, and so I'm used to that. Please feel free, as Eddie will testify to that too. Let's begin with the fair funding formula, which is essential to providing all children in Pennsylvania the opportunity for academic success. For too long, politics has determined what funding was provided to public schools in Pennsylvania. And yet, study after study shows that Pennsylvania is at the bottom for funding inequities, particularly with respect to districts with high poverty student rates. I heard numbers today of 18% from Dr. Mannion. I heard numbers from Eddie about 80%. Mr. Brennan gave a different number. Scranton School District is also like Wilkes-Barre. We're in excess of 80%. Free and reduced lunch. And it is going to continue to grow. While next year's budget proposal does not incorporate a complete new funding formula, it is a step in the right direction of correcting funding inequities because it offers a commitment to a new formula in subsequent years. Governor Wolf's solution for the state's escalating public pension debt is the best plan we've heard from in years. His proposal goes to the root of the problem by correcting years of underfunding by the state and school districts. For years, public employers, the state and school districts, did not even pay on existing employees' benefits as they earned them. And as when a person does not pay on the principal of a loan, the cost of the loan gets higher and higher as the years go on. The governor's $3 billion bond is a necessary transfusion of cash to protect Peasers and making the state's wine and spirit shops more profitable in order to make the payments on the bond is a smart way to leverage what the state already has to make the best deal for Pennsylvania taxpayers. In the last 20 years, charter school enrollment in bricks and mortar and cyber schools has increased substantially. This increased enrollment has led to financial strain for many school districts. The public school code and state policy should catch up with the present day reality, the charter schools in Pennsylvania, and the governor's charter funding proposals offer a more realistic way of balancing how public education is delivered in the Commonwealth, requiring all charter schools to return to school districts any revenue over and above their audited expenditure is a welcome change to the charter funding debate. Determining the actual cost of providing cyber charter education and funding cyber charters based on the cost is common sense. And might I suggest, congruent with calls for district public schools to be funded on their actual cost. I guess you would say quid pro quo. Governor Wolf's proposals for education funding are a breath of fresh air. Not only do his proposals reject the politics of the last 4 years, but they also make the best deal for Pennsylvania's taxpayers. In the end, his multifaceted approach to increasing state support of public schools, right-sizing charter school reimbursements, and leveraging a profitable state asset to infuse cash into PESers all do the same thing: reduce school property tax for the residents of Pennsylvania while providing essential resources to school districts. And now, again, I'm going to go off script because a couple of things are happening that I would like you to help us with on top of all of this. And this is a topic that perhaps you are not aware of. So I'm going to make you aware of it. I hope you listen with keen ears because I'm going to ask you for help. I'm asking you for help publicly. In our public schools, right now, probably throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, teachers and paraprofessional workers are being assaulted. A few weeks ago, one of my teachers' lungs collapsed. Why? Because a child in her kindergarten went out of control and hit her. She was in the hospital for a while until that problem was resolved, her medical condition. Just the other day, one of our students spit into the mouth of one of the paraprofessionals. I've had a teacher poked in her face and insisted that she be taken to the nearest eye doctor because the pencil actually went into the eye area. There's not a day that goes by that I do not find out that a teacher or para in my union has been hit, punched, kicked, cursed at, spit upon, assaulted daily. What we need from the legislature is language that protects my people from assaults, but ensures that they will not lose time using up all of their sick days when they've been assaulted at work. We need help with that. We need legislation on that. We need our people protected. There are states who have such legislation, but I think Pennsylvania has to be at the forefront of this. Now you say, well, you know, Rosemary, why? What's this all about? Well, it leads me to the second point. We have in the state of Pennsylvania a new way to evaluate teachers. It's probably one of the most complex things that has ever come down the pike. For a building administrator to do a teacher evaluation, one teacher, using what's called the Danielson model, named after its creator, Charlotte Danielson, could take anywhere from 4 to 6 hours per one teacher. There has to be a pre-conference, there has to be a classroom observation for the entire lesson, and a post-conference. In this building alone, we have 165 teachers. Multiply that, and you can see where our building administrator is going to find himself or herself never not observing. The flaw in the ointment is that if that pre-conference takes place and the administrator comes into that teacher's classroom, well, that teacher is ready to go, the principal's ready to go, and then the principal gets called out because of maybe an assault in the school. Or any parent comes to visit, and that principal leaves. All of the planning, all of the prep work is for naught. We have to start all over again with another pre-conference, another lesson plan, another hours wasted. Teachers need to be evaluated. We've always been evaluated, always. But I think common sense has to prevail here in terms of time and fairness. Now, the result of this new system of evaluation is that if we were to walk a few blocks from this school to one of our schools where it has a high population of poor students, those teachers are penalized 2 times. They're penalized by the state because their school has a number assigned to it, and they're penalized from testing because their students don't perform well on that test. That is mandated. And so at the end of the academic year, that teacher is given an evaluation, and might I say, it is impossible for any teacher here to get a distinguished rating. Impossible. The rating exists on paper, but my teachers can't get it through no fault of their own. And if we were to pick up that building and move it to another school district, my teachers would be distinguished. But because of where they work, what building they're in, and the students who come to them, they're penalized. They are doing the work of gods in those classrooms. They not only teach those children, but they do everything to help them and empower those children to be good citizens, to be good people in their schools, and for that, they're punished. Something is terribly wrong with the way this system was concocted. The next thing they put into play, they, meaning the Department of Ed, something called an SLO. I, for one, wish we would stop speaking in letters and start speaking in words, because nobody in the world understands education anymore. It's called a student learning outcome, student learning outcome. And now the teachers have to write student learning outcomes, and they're going to be judged on that. Did the student achieve the outcome that the teacher has to say they will achieve? If the students don't achieve that outcome, the teacher is rated below. Can you imagine in September that you're going to predict on paper how a child's going to achieve a certain level when we don't know if that child's dog died that day, or if a child's grandfather died that day, or if the child's mother was arrested for drug dealing, and yet the teachers are going to be held accountable for that? What other system do you know of that this is happening? Is it happening to lawyers? Is the lawyer in courtroom A judged on the performance of the lawyer in courtroom B? I don't think so. But yet, that's how we're being judged in this state. Building by building, we're being judged. Oftentimes, the teacher is being judged on students they've never taught, never laid eyes on. In some school districts, the numbers used are 2 years old. Well, in those 2 years, you've had new hires. You've never even heard of these children, and yet they're being rated by that number. This is something that must be addressed. And dare I say, if you were a child, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old in an elementary school, and you just saw your teacher hit or kicked or punched, or dare I say, if you saw a child running down the hall screaming obscenities, or if you saw a student running down the hall naked, and you were taking the PSSA test that day, how do you think you'd fare? I dare say you would not do well on the test because you wouldn't be able to concentrate in that school that day. And this is not just going on in Scranton, it's going on throughout the state of Pennsylvania. And nobody is talking about it, and nobody's paying attention to it. Why? Because nobody lets it be known that this is occurring. Well, I'm going to let it be known that it's occurring, and I want it addressed. I need the teachers and the paraprofessionals who work in our schools protected. And I should actually include our administrators, because several of them have gotten nice kicks to their shins from students. And some of you probably say, whoa, that would never happen when I was a kid in school. No, it probably wouldn't. But it does now. And I would say that when I started to teach in the Scranton School District, I would have told you that it would never occur that we'd have to call the Scranton Police Department to our schools to take out a kindergarten child for assaulting somebody. So these issues are pressing upon us, so much so currently, especially in urban school districts like Scranton, that we need your help. We need legislation to protect us so that we can go into our job and do our job and make our students successful as any student in any school in this United States of America should be. And that's my testimony today. If you have any questions for me, I would be glad to answer.
Annie has a question.
I figured you would.
Well, Rosemary, I love a sassy teacher. You are a sassy teacher, saying it as it is. And I was digging into my folder here to show you that there are other people that are becoming more and more what you're talking about. This says, the ever-increasing burden on America's public schools. And it starts off 1900 to 1910. The concern and the responsibilities related to students was basically on health. So lessons on basic hygiene, course on nutrition, immunizations, and screening of vision, hearing, and dental problems. And then each year, each decade, it shows the increases in the responsibilities of the schools. And on the back here, I don't know if you can tell, but right here, this is 1900 to 1910. This is 1910 to 1940. Here's the 40s, 50s, 60s. Okay? Now we turn to this side. There's the 70s. Notice how big the 80s is,
Right.
the 90s, and now the 2000, no child left behind. Internet safety, bullying prevention, lessons on texting and social media, elevator, escalator, safety instruction, body mass index, eating disorder, suicide, organ donor, steroid, media literacy, expand early childhood, financial literacy, intruder lockdown, health and wellness, leadership training, contextual learning, entrepreneurial innovation, credit revival, online learning, race to the top, Common Core standards, STEM. That's all required.
And
That's all expected.
And that's not the end of the list.
I know. But let's, because you brought an analogy here, you brought a fact here that is very important, and I tried to make a similar point yesterday. You said you just had a bunch of kids that come here from a foreign country
Yes,
that lived in a hut.
yes,
And your point, I believe, was in order to get these kids up to speed, in order to have them be able to function on some kind of positive level in this district, it takes a lot of resources
it
to
most
help
certainly
those
does.
people. okay?
Yes, it does.
In Wilkes-Barre, I don't know if we have any kids that formerly lived in a hut. But the example I gave yesterday was, we have kids that come to school in a station wagon that they slept in.
That's right.
Those kids cannot, will not, never will do well on a test. They're coming to school for survival, to eat, to have breakfast, lunch, some socialization, some survival from the environment that they're in. And the reason I'm making this point is because you had said it so perfectly, that you're not going to have in Scranton, in your Scranton School District, any teachers that are going to become, what's the term for testing? Distinguished,
The rating,
the rating.
yes,
They'll never get a distinguished
they
rating.
won't.
And most likely Scranton will never be a five-star school based on your testing scores.
Well, I think we are 5-star.
No, I'm not saying you're not.
I know. And
Listen to-
what I
listen
want
to
you
what
to
I'm
do
saying.
before you leave, all of you, anybody in this room is take a look out in the hallway here. And you'll see our AP students, advanced placement students in our Scranton School District in this particular high school. And we're proud of that. We are so proud of those students because in calculus alone, they achieved 5 on the AP. On this stage, about a year or so back, at graduation honors night, there was over $13 million of scholarships awarded to our seniors in this particular high school. That's just one of our high schools. So we must be doing something right. When students in Scranton School District can go to Harvard and Yale and Princeton and all of the other Ivy League schools, we're doing something correct. And our graduation rate is up, and we want to keep it that way, but we need help to make everybody there.
I'm not suggesting you're not doing your job. I'm not suggesting that at
Oh,
all.
I know you're not.
All I'm saying is that it's impossible for a school district to score high on the tests that are required,
It is.
just as Wilkes-Barre is. When you have 80% of the kids in free and reduced lunch, they are not going to score high on those tests. And with less resources, there's no chance for that. So that's why you need the resources. But the main point is that there's enough studies out there that demonstrate if you put the money into pre-K, $1 invested brings you $7 in return. Even before that, $1 invested is $17 in return. The public schools are now becoming the family for these kids.
That's
not just
correct.
the education, they're the family. That's their only hope. So this budget that's been proposed by Governor Wolf, well thought out, very comprehensive. We need everyone's help out there in the audience and in every one of these communities to make sure they make their case known. And the point is, this is a heck of a better direction that we're going in than we were over the last 4 years. The last 4 years put us $2.3 billion in the hole, forced all your property taxes up, class sizes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is something that we have to get behind. Now, obviously, there's going to be negotiations. It's not going to look the same, but we got to work hard to try to make sure we get enough money out to all of you so that you guys can all have the opportunity to succeed.
That would be so much appreciated. I suppose everybody in this room feels the same way I do. We so greatly appreciate the fact that you're here today, and just those kind words mean a great deal to us in education.
Appreciate
It's
your work.
very
Thank you so
important to us.
much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Rosemary.
Thank you.
Just wanted to thank everyone for coming out today. It was very good to hear everyone's testimony on what our local school districts are facing in terms of the financial crisis and their pensions. It's good to hear that, Mr. Mann. But I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out, and thank you for spending your time here. Thank you.
My name is April Kemp, and I'm a parent, and my two children go to the Scranton School District, and so I just feel like I should do something to represent the parents, two children whose children go to the school district.
You want to come?
Yeah, come up
Come on
and,
down, come on down,
yeah,
dear.
speak into the mic so we could all get you. John.
Just explain to the committee who you are and
My name is April Kemp, and my two daughters go to the Scranton School District. And Rosemary, we spoke very passionately about the teachers, and I, for one, love the teachers that teach at McNichols Plaza, where my two children go. I have a daughter who's in first grade and a daughter who's in fifth grade at McNichols Plaza. Before they went to Scranton, however, we lived in Dunmore. And when we moved to Scranton, because my husband is a city worker, he has to live in Scranton. I fought tooth and nail for my children not to go to the Scranton School District. As a parent, I believe my children deserve the best education possible. Did I think that they could get that at McNichols Plaza? Absolutely not. I tried to get an exception into the Abingtons because I work in the Abingtons. I could not get that exception. Do my children deserve to go somewhere else? No, they're no different than any of the other children in the Scranton School District, and I guarantee you they wouldn't be allowed anywhere else. This year, with with McNichols Plaza, my children are well cared for. They learn. They bring home the homework packets with the year 2012 photocopy, and that's what they're working from. My 5-year-old is learning words that I didn't learn till I was 16 because of the children writing on the bathroom walls that are not painted over. Their bathrooms have no locks on their stalls. My children deserve privacy. The 476 students of McNichols Plaza deserve privacy when they go to the bathroom. At recess, 476 students, whenever they take the recess period, have 5 balls to share. There is no playground. There is 3 hopscotches painted on the pavement where people park, where my children get to play. My children deserve better. My husband and I are now making the decision to pull them out and send them to private school. We pay our taxes, and now we're looking at $800 a month to spend on our children to receive better education. I'm not saying education, better, fair treatment. They deserve after-school activities. They deserve to have locks on their door and not to read profanity when they use the bathroom. The teachers at my children's school pay $3 every Friday out of their own pocket to provide Fun Friday for my children. And I appreciate the fact that they do so. They give them movies, they give them popcorn, they do everything they possibly can. They have a food drive once a month because my school is a Hilltop and Valley View. It's a
Project.
project school. Yes, thank you. So all of the projects feed into McNichols Plaza. So they do a food drive for all of those children. My children do not participate in that program, however, their friends do. They now have a night of reading and dinner to get the parents engaged. Parent engagement is one that I know that most parents are not that involved. The PTA at McNichols Plaza is 5 parents. 4 of them are teachers with their children that go to that school, and myself. I care deeply about our children. My husband and I have decided to not send them to private school because they do not deserve better than anybody else. So I'm here to tell everybody that I'm standing on the front line for my children, the children of Scranton, the Scranton School Board, that we need transparency. This budget excites me. I'm thrilled for change. I think we all want the same thing. We want to see change. And with that, we have to be change. I've requested through the Right to Know Act budgets, breakdowns of every single school in the Scranton School District, including the administration. In 2008, we passed out on the Common Sense State Initiative to get a look into our schools and to cut that fat. I don't know if that money's in the budget this year again. I know it was millions of dollars to do that. I think that that's something that needs to be looked at. These kids are our future, and they deserve it. My first grader, Alexis, there's a child who speaks no English in her class. Their downtime, they help her. And I'm great for that opportunity because my child is learning to give and be selfless, which she probably wouldn't learn somewhere else. With that being said, I really appreciate your time, but
Thank you, April.
thank you.
Thanks.
You did a great job.
Thank you, everyone.